Welcome to the Sunrise Safari. My name's Brent Smith. I have Andrew Francis on camera. As you can see, it's quite a grey day behind me, but never dull here at Djuma Private Game Reserve. And so much excitement yesterday, and I'm hoping we can find some of those animals that we saw on yesterday's safaris. So we're here on Galago Shortcut. I haven't had a chance to see that baby hyena yet, so we're going to meander down towards the hyena den and see if they're at home. So let's get going. Remember, we are live, so you are experiencing the African bush at the exact same time as me, as well as the fact that we are interactive. You are able to ask us questions about what we're seeing, and you can do that by using the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. So James and Brian are out on foot somewhere in this vast wilderness, and hopefully they'll be on fresh tracks. Speaking of tracks, what tracks? So those. And yes, Andrew is correct, it's Howard. For those of you who are getting confused about Howard, Howard is my generic name for hyena. So, and that comes from a cardboard cutout I have of a hyena, which is life-size, which is quite fun around camp. You can place Howard in different places, and it tends to cause a bit of a fright. We've had people shout at Howard, but hopefully we're not going to be looking at a cardboard cutout this morning. We're going to be looking at some real hyenas. So that male lion that Peter had yesterday, I didn't hear any audio of him last night, and I'm hoping he hasn't moved off the property. But we're definitely going to go check around the Djuma waterhole. So any of you guys who are watching the Djuma cam, did you see him move? Did he come down for another drink last night? And let me know. Remember, hashtag SafariLive, or you can email questions at WildEarthTV. Always check these junctions of roads quite carefully. You never know. A lot of the predators like to use roads as highways, especially if there's a lot of heavy dew in the morning. They don't really like getting their feet and their faces too wet. And the way the road systems are built in a lot of game reserves is that they follow old animal paths, and that's why we do find so many animals on the roads. And of course, approaching the hyena den, there's many hyena tracks around. Unfortunately, in this light, it's a bit difficult to show them to you, but if I do see a nice clear one, I shall definitely do that. Apparently the monster 6-person fireside chat was a big hit last night. We're glad you guys enjoyed it. It was really fun for all of us. It's very seldom that all 6 of us get to sit down together and have a chat with you guys. And also to everyone in the States, a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope you guys are absolutely stuffing yourselves full of turkeys and yams, which we actually call sweet potatoes. Okay, about to go into the hyena den, so keep a little bit more quiet. And hopefully, someone's at home. So this is one of many dens that the hyenas use in this area. And the reason they move dens so frequently is because, well, hyenas are quite smelly, so they've got lots of parasites. What happens is when the buildup of especially fleas happens, that they will move to another den. So they generally have multiple den sites within the core section of their home range. Early morning's always a good time to come to the hyena den. Quite often the female would have been out in search of food and returning to feed the youngster. And it's amazing how little hyenas become bold very quickly. There you can see the entrance, or one of the many entrances to this den site. Arrive at the den and they saw off. They've been running around after wild dogs, and I know James has seen them running around with a buffalo leg. So this clan has been very, very busy over this last week, and now we're just catching them in a moment of tenderness. There we go, she's grooming the cub. You can see those big ears on the female. Let's see if we move a little bit further forward, if we can get a better view. So especially around young animals, it's always very good to, when you start the car, just let it run for a few seconds, and that's to habituate them to the sound and not to move too quickly, even though this little one is already very used to us sitting here at the den, and James and Peter, the other presenters, have spent quite a bit of time here. So unfortunately we can't see the little one from here, but we've got a nice view of the adult. So we will have a quick look here, and then we'll try and move around. Annie is saying, what a good first time mommy. Annie, I'm not quite sure whether this is her first. Let's say it is quite difficult to say. She does look to be not one of the sort of matriarchal hyenas in this clan. So not one of the top ranking ones. And I haven't seen any of that behavior, but I'm going on what the other guys have seen. There we go. Constantly grooming. So I just thought we might be able to get a visual here, but I think we're going to have to move around to the other side of the den. See how those big radar ears? She's constantly listening, and she can hear things that we couldn't even fathom. You can see the little cubs here popping up. And the dawn chorus is starting to wake up, and hear all the birds in the distance around us, and the normal morning culprits, Franklin, doves, here an oriole. Okay, let's try see if we can get a better view. It's always important to be very respectful of these animals, and we never want to cross that boundary and get too close. So, I mean, it would be very easy for us to just drive right there, but it might cause the animals to not be as relaxed. So it's always better to just stay a little bit further away, give the animals their space. She's only got one cub, and there's a story in that in itself. And a really great question came through from Will in Connecticut. And Will's wondering is, what is the maximum amount of young a female hyena can have? So I have heard them having up to 3, but that is seriously abnormal, and with only 1 surviving. So depending on the ratio of the sexes in the litter, depends on the litter's survival. So normally it's a maximum of 2, as I said, in really rare circumstances. And there's some more hyenas at home. Slightly older little cub now. This age, it's one of my favorite ages for hyena cubs. It's when they become very brave and quite often come to the side of your vehicle. And well, so if there are 2 females born, almost exclusively only 1 will survive. Hyenas practice siblicide, or Cain and Abel syndrome. So within minutes of that second baby being born, the first baby will use its milk teeth to kill its sister. Now the reason for this with 2 females is that they are competing for the exact same social position in the clan. So it's basically removing its competition from birth. So the instincts are so strong from that very young age. But if 2 males are born, sometimes they will both survive, but it has been recorded that siblicide also happens between 2 male hyenas, but less common than with hyenas. And there we go. Young hyenas are great chewers of all things, and if you look carefully around the den, you'll often find almost all sticks and pieces of wood and whatnot have all been chewed to some degree by the youngsters. Probably this one, oh, there we go, got a stick. Probably about 6-7 months old now. And grow very, very quickly. So, just checking behind, see if another hyena's come in. I wonder what that little guy's seen, or we could just be playing the interest game. So it's quite fun sometimes that you'll notice quite a bit of behavior that in your domestic pets, which is very similar to what we see out in the wild. And Georgianne in Illinois, good morning Georgianne, is wondering, do hyena mothers lick the backside of the youngsters to induce defecation like cats do? Well, Georgianne, they do, but they also just sort of lick the whole hyena. And I haven't really seen them focus on that. With hyenas, it's quite difficult to tell, but because their genitalia is so important in social standing and the structure of the clan, they're quite often licking in that general area. So there is a strong possibility that they would do that to induce defecation, especially if the baby was having a bit of an upset stomach. But also there's a lot of licking and smelling that goes on around that general area, just because of the way hyenas are and how important their genitalia is in terms of the social structure. So for those of you who don't know, female hyenas have pseudo-testes, so almost fake testicles, and a pseudo-penis, which is an enlarged clitoris. And they have a very, very high level of androgen, which is a male hormone, and they are often much, much bigger than the males. And it is possibly the only truly matriarchal society where the females rule the roost, and there's not even any chance of a male getting up in charge. The most lowest ranking female is higher ranking than the highest ranking male, and being a male hyena is not fun. They get bullied and beaten, lost to eat, and even with mating, quite often they can just get really, really beaten up and attacked just after they're finished mating. So you really wouldn't want to be a male hyena. And also in terms of dispersal, they're the ones that leave the natal clan, whereas the females will always stay with their natal clan. So males disperse to ensure genetics are kept not too inbred, so they will move through to another clan, and for a male to join another clan is an incredibly difficult thing, and they do have a lot of problems when they do join a new clan. So we're gonna wait here, see if that little guy comes out to play a little bit, and while we do that, let's go see what Commander Bond's up to on the bushwalk.
Good morning everyone. We are standing here in a drainage line, a sort of dry river bed, the WildEarthTV. Say that 100 times in the morning. It's not easy. It's the major drainage line that runs down through the middle of Djuma. We're looking at a beautiful yellow flower. On camera is Brian this morning. He can't show you his thumb at the moment because obviously he's holding the camera. We're looking at a beautiful yellow flower. And this yellow flower is from the tree Peltophorum africanum, or the weeping wattle. And, well, it's commonly known as the toilet paper tree, which you probably all know because I'm sure we've all told you that 3 or 4 times. But it's also used as an eye ointment. Franklin's going crazy. Used as an eye ointment, so you crush up some of the leaves, soak them in water, and apparently put them in your eyes when your eyes are a bit sore. I've not tried it. I don't believe that I shall. Anyway, now, we are on foot, clearly, and we're going to be taking a gentle stroll up towards the eastern side of the reserve to see what we can find. This is the most immersive experience that you can have in the wilderness. You can feel the earth under your feet, you can smell all the smells, you can hear everything. There's no sound from an engine. And it's very interesting to see how the creatures out here react to us when we're on foot. Now, our evolutionary past, of course, tells us that we are seen as the apex predator out here. And so all of the animals that we come across will see us as such, and they'll react accordingly. Now, there's a lot, while certainly being on foot carries with it a little bit more risk than it might in a vehicle, it's very important to note that once you understand how animals react to us on foot, how they perceive us, how they see us as the apex predator, you can start to mitigate any potential dangers. And as I say to people often, there is no such thing as a dangerous animal. There are many potentially dangerous animals, but as long as you understand how they will react to us as human beings in the wild here as the apex predator, as long as you understand the threat that they feel from us, you can be pretty much safe. Obviously, sometimes things can go wrong, but as long as you're careful, well, hopefully things are okay. So, if we look up and down this drainage line here, you can see that the WildEarthTV splits into 3 or 4 different kind of streams, and I think there must have been a time when this was a much wetter area than it is now. At the moment, you can see it's quite cloudy, and we do get we're in the rainy season, but we only get about 500, watch out Brian, we're about to be attacked by a tree, nasty tree. There we go. Quite a dry area, 500 millimeters of rain, which is only about 2 inches, a little over 2 inches. And how these drainage lines formed, I think, can only be a throwback to a much wetter time out here. Let's have a look at some of these interesting things. I think a lot of these grasses here get passed over as grasses, and they're not grasses at all. In fact, this is a grass. I thought it was a sedge. Lots of these different kinds of things that grow here, it is a sedge, that grow in the drainage lines, and you can see it's got a little bulb on it. Very, very nutritious it will be during the dry times, and look at the way the roots grow. No taproot. And what I'll do, I would like to show you, it's an important part of the time of year this. Lots of, a little bit of rain, it's wetted the top surface of the soil, and that means that the grasses are now starting to turn green. Now this is a sedge, it's not a grass, and we know that from the keel. You can see this kind of tremendously keeled part of the leaf here, and it's just very different. Right, interesting little sedge in the drainage line. Let us keep going. You can see the trees are very large here because of the water that flows underground. Right, we're going to head up to the east, keep you posted. Let's go back to the hyenas while they're out of the den with Brent, and we'll see you just now.
So we're still at the hyena den. The little one hasn't moved out, but this sub-adult or 6-month-old cub is producing some really nice stuff. He's having a scratch there. And this is why I really love that den. You've got that fallen knobthorn, that roost system, and then one of the main holes into the den is right there. So it does provide a really nice backdrop to what we're seeing. And he's busy trying to dig out and chew on a root. Or could just be making a more comfy spot to have a sleep. But I think there he goes, after a root. Oh, baby's upset. He had that high-pitched squeak. There we go, you can just see, I think Mom moved a little bit and he couldn't get to her teat. So, having a look there, hyenas, when they first give birth, often lose their first litter. So they give birth out of an incredibly complex birthing canal compared to most mammals, and that's due to the high androgen levels. So baby hyenas normally have to go through a normal sort of a 90-degree turn, and so very often the first litter they ever have takes so long that the litter's stillborn, they suffocate during birth, and then the second, obviously after the babies have passed through there, it's a much easier process. And we have a question from the land of the long white cloud. For those of you who are not sure where that is New Zealand, also home, as I hate to say it, of the All Blacks, the current world champions at rugby. Morning, Rosanna. Rosanna would like to know, would a female hyena take the baby away from the den? She would, only under certain circumstances. So when the fleas and the parasites have got too bad in the den, she will pick up and carry the baby hyena, to the next den site and then get it settled in the next spot. Entertaining itself while the little one is feeding, no one to play with. There we go. And I'm saying almost every stick, root, or anything that's sort of a chewable height gets seriously chewed. And obviously with young hyenas that really helps with the development of their jaws and that strengthen their jaws. And like puppies like to chew, can you imagine a puppy that is able to crush bone now chewing on everything? So probably would not make the best of pets. So we've just talked about how hyenas do move through multiple den sites, and Andre, who's in sunny Florida, would like to know what happens to the parasites that get left behind. Well, Andre, they get hungry. They've got nothing to feed on. A lot of them will then lay eggs. Certain flea species live in the sand, and so they'll actually go dormant till the next time the den is in use. Others will obviously, unfortunately, perish, or fortunately perish. And when you're looking for hyena dens and there's no hyenas there, if you walk up to a den and suddenly you are attacked by a seething mass of fleas, it generally means the den site is probably active or has been active very, very shortly, or in the last couple of weeks. Well, next chew toy. And those of you who've been watching for a while know I've had a few discussions with young hyenas. So on these vehicles, there's a very little rubber oil cap on the hub, and it's very, very strange. And I mean, we spend time with baby lions, baby leopards, but baby hyenas seem to zone in on this, and they quite often steal those little hubs off the vehicles. So, and especially at this age, where this young one is dragging the stick at the moment, they are the great hub thieves. And as I said, we spend so much time at the dens that they become very habituated to us. So our vehicles and the other vehicles become part of that great amount of chew toys around. And we do discourage them sternly. I've talked severely to a few young hyenas over the years. It almost looks like this little guy's biding its time till the tiny one has been released for playtime and dinner time's over. So we're going to sit here for a little bit longer. If the baby doesn't get moving, we might move on and come back a little later. But in the meantime, let's go head across to Commander Bond, who's with a retired old gentleman.
Hello everybody. It's quite eerie here in the drainage line. The wind is blowing through the trees and it's made doubly eerie by this deceased buffalo. No longer alive, obviously, but very interesting. Probably killed by lions at some stage, but look how white it is, how it's been cleaned, picked totally clean by the ants, mainly. Ants looking for morsels. There is no mammal that would be able to clean bone to this extent. There isn't even a piece of flesh on it left, and it doesn't smell at all. And that's because it's been completely bleached by the sun and by the ants. They've picked it totally off. Also, you would have seen one of the carrion beetles, or certainly a carrion-eating beetle, that metallic blue beetle that you saw when you came live on this skull. Right, let's just have a look over, flip it over and have a look. And I think it's quite interesting. Just for those of you who are perhaps younger viewers, remember, don't go into the wild and fiddle with skulls and things with your bare hands. You may forget to wash your hands, and you just don't know what diseases there could be on these skulls and bones. So I try to avoid touching them with my hands, and if I do touch them, I try and remember to then wash my hands. So if there's a little bit of flesh left underneath here, and you can see there where the first vertebra joins on. Most interestingly, I think, is these holes that occur. All of those little holes will carry nerves and blood vessels to various parts of the brain and all the other little bits and pieces in the skull that need to be need nervous tissue and need oxygen. Its main function is to give everything oxygen. Tiny little brain case. You can see that they're really and that's for all the fighting that they do. This was a male buffalo. He was an old bull. Not that old. I mean, from the looks of his teeth, I don't think that he was that old. He didn't have a particularly impressive set. Well, there he didn't brush his teeth very well. His teeth were definitely starting to wear away. Quite sore, I think.
So, welcome back. The little one has gone to have a nap. His playmate is not, or her playmate is not being released from a maternal custody, and we're not really getting great visuals of the little one. Where mom is lying, it's just a really difficult position for us. There's a buffalo thorn in the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to head out and see what else we can find, but definitely worth coming back here a little bit later on the sunrise safari to see if there's any more action. So during feeding time, the little hyena is quite static, but hopefully with a full belly, it will be filled with the joy of morning, and it'll be playtime a little bit later. Again, always important, let the car run for a few seconds. So you can see all these holes, and some of them go really deep into the ground. And Rosanna would like to know if I've ever taken any photos inside a den. Well, Rosanna, in my younger years, when I was slightly wilder, I've actually crawled right through a hyena den, a disused one that was not active, to see what it was like. And one of the biggest dangers of that is hyenas aren't the only animals that use these disused aardvark holes. And I've actually, the den on the reserve I live on is often at the exact same time shared by porcupines and hyena. So watch out there, Andrew. Go on, let me change the angle. So it is a prickly affair down there, and I do remember one of the times I was head first in a hole. I heard that distinct rattle of a porcupine's quills, that shh, and I don't think I've ever moved that fast backwards on my belly before. But also, as I got older, unfortunately, being 6'3" with some change makes it a bit difficult to crawl down small holes. But I did do quite a lot of crawling into small holes when I was in Central Africa and Gabon, looking for the dwarf, or the smallest crocodile species in Africa. Very, very cool little crocodiles, and they quite often live in these burrows. So I have never taken photos inside a hyena den. I have been inside a hyena den though, but I have taken photos inside a dwarf crocodile's den. So we've got Bright and Jeffrey out this morning as well, and those of you who are not sure who Bright and Jeffrey are, they are our trackers who are here at the moment. They are scouring the northern boundary for tracks. So I'm going to leave them to the northern boundary, and we're going to head towards the southern boundary. So we were fortunate yesterday to spend quite a bit of time with some tiny little impalas that were just born. And Mary from Michigan, Great Lakes District, is wondering, would they have those tiny impala lambs? Mary, most definitely. Hyenas love a little bit of tender impala, and they would definitely take advantage of that food source at this time of the year. Not only would hyenas, but incredibly baboons. We'll carry on this discussion, but James has got possibly, definitely my favorite antelope on foot.
Brent's favorite antelope, he says, a bushbuck, one of the spiral-horned antelope. 3 species we get here. Let's just try and get a little bit closer. He didn't react to us at all as we came walking up here, which is just so wonderful. He just kind of wandered off down there. So let's move a little closer and try not to behave like a predator. Just watch your feet there, Brian. And just by strolling through here, we're obviously not behaving like predators. So he watched us coming from quite a long way off. Unfortunately, you didn't get a great view of him, so we'll try and get another view. There he is. The whole little group of them there. Sorry, Brian's stuck under the tree with the aerial. There they go. Just down through there. Obviously called bushbuck because they like to live in the thick bush. And I'm sure you can get a feeling for the atmosphere that there is around here. It is quite, it's quite heavy. It's quite a thick kind of atmosphere. Then, around us here is this lovely tamboti tree, and again, like that skull is an ecosystem to itself, so is this tree. Here is a rubbing post where probably buffalo have come and rubbed themselves. This you can touch and feel, and I always think it's such an amazing thing to be able to touch a spot where a massive animal of Africa has come and rubbed itself. That's Brian's hand. He's also rubbing it now, and he's kind of polished this tree totally smooth here. And they come along and they rub off the sand, rub off the mud, and they do that to get parasites off their bodies. And sometimes if you look at the mud here, you can find ticks embedded, but it doesn't seem to be the case today. Then you can see where the elephants have sat in the shade here. It's a beautiful shady tree, so on a hot day they will come, and maybe a small herd or a bull will sit under this tree. Sometimes they'll lie down and have a bit of a snooze when it's very hot, a bit like us. And you can see the dung beetles have flattened this particular piece of elephant dung here. This is amazing to me. This used to be the traditional kind of balls of elephant dung like you see normally, but the dung beetles have got into this slot. Not the rolling kind that we see very often, but a different kind of dung beetle. They flatten this, and they'll be underneath it, burying the dung in the ground and laying their eggs in it as we speak. We'll just try and see if we can't find one or two. You can get an idea from it here, Brian. No, you can't. Brian can't lean over at the moment. But there, you can see where they've buried. Here comes a beetle. You can see where they've buried it. They've just kind of almost amalgamated it with the soil, and their grubs will come up. I suspect maybe it's early enough in the season for them to come up this year. Otherwise they'll come up next year out of the ground when the first rains come. So it's supposed to be quite rainy today. It doesn't feel very stormy, but it does feel like we might get a bit of drizzle. Right, come everybody, let's carry on. I was mentioning the floods and the kind of water that we get in the area in Maryland and California. Thank you for your question. Welcome on our little walk this morning. We want to know if we get any flash floods. Maryland, we do get flash floods now and again, but we'd probably have to have about 10, probably about 100 millimeters of rain in a really short period for it to come screaming down the drainage lines. That last maybe I'd say maybe a couple of hours, if that. So we're probably about 100 millimeters of rain we'd need. Sorry, when I said 500 millimeters of rain that we get every year, I said that it was 2 inches. It's about 20 inches of rain. Sorry, my conversions to imperial are not that great. It's quite astonishing to me that people still use the imperial system, of course, but I suppose people will be arguing about that for years and years to come. So Maryland, after about 4 inches of rain, we'd have a flash flood, but it would have to come very quickly. It would have to come within sort of an hour or two. Here is a leadwood tree. Now this leadwood tree has been savaged by some elephants. You can see that they've broken it down. It's called a leadwood because the wood is so hard. Now, as we know, water has a density of 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter. Now, do not even begin to ask me to try and do that in imperial, but 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter is the density of water. And basically what it means is if you pick up a liter of water, it'll weigh a kilogram, right? So 1,000 kilograms of water will weigh a ton. Now, this leadwood here is denser than that. It comes in at about 1,100 kilograms per cubic meter, roughly. Some trees will be different from others. But what that means is that if you take a solid piece of leadwood and you put it in water, it will sink. I find that astonishing, that there is wood around here that you can put in water that will sink to the bottom. I think that's amazing. And all of the combretum trees, this is one of them, but the most common is the red bush willow, the combretum apiculatum. That has a density of about 1,250 kilograms per cubic meter. That will sink like a stone. Very interesting tree. This, I suspect, is a very ancient individual. If you come around here, Brian, you can see here, normally they survive these trees for hundreds of years after they've died, because the wood is so dense and the borer beetles and funguses and that sort of thing can't get into them. But this one here is completely hollow and it's not dead. I find that absolutely incredible, that this stump is part of a living tree. So despite the fact that there is no heartwood there, the heartwood of any tree is essentially dead cambium or vascular tissue that is no longer used by the tree. But this tree has got vascular tissue coming up the outside, and it's feeding a new kind of generation of leaves. And I mean, you'd never be able to age this tree, but I suspect it's probably pretty ancient. Amazing. What have we got in here? A couple of spiders and things, but I think the light is too poor to get in there. My torch unfortunately broke this morning, so I can't show you what's inside there. You can see the leaves of the leadwood tree. I think we should probably taste one, Brian, you know, just for, you know,
research.
Well, research, and we're good at tasting things. So we tasted the variable bush willow and the red bush willow the other day, and decided the variable was much better. And the elephants actually decide the same thing. They will eat the variable, but they don't like the red so much. There you are, Brian.
Oh.
That's not too bad. Not as good as the variable, but better than the red.
Definitely.
Same genus, Combretum imberbe, this one. Right, let's carry on. We're just sort of winding our way up the drainage line here, seeing what's living on the banks. Now, Teresa, thank you for your question. You want to know if this is the stick that Brent gave me. It isn't. I've lost that stick. I don't know where it is. Please don't tell him. I don't know where it's gone. I think it might be in the tent. I definitely took it up to the tent, but thereafter, I'm afraid my scatterbrain has completely forgotten where it is. It's also extremely disorientating on a day like this when you can't see the sun. And these, I mean, what's so nice about being on foot is that you can explore areas that you don't come in the vehicle. And so you can get very disorientated very quickly, but we have our compass out, and I'll tell you what direction we're heading in. Telephone has a compass, isn't that amazing? We're heading due north. I was supposed to be heading east, but we'll carry on going north. Right, let's head back across to Brenty for an update. We're going to cross through here and try to sort of peel off in an easterly direction, and we'll see you shortly.
I really have to apologize. Apparently James is lost again, so he's got to use his phone and the compass. I do apologize. Hopefully, it's one of those things you can't teach. I've tried to teach James which way is north and south. He just really doesn't seem to get it, so he has to use his compass. I think maybe that's a good Christmas present for James. Maybe one that's not on a phone that he can keep around his neck, just in case he gets lost while out on safari. But just to let you guys know what we're up to, we are now checking down towards the southwestern corner of Djuma Private Game Reserve, and we are looking for tracks. We haven't seen any yet, and with this cool windy weather, it's quite often that a lot of your herbivores, and for those not sure, herbivores, your grass and leaf eaters, are going to be quite scarce. So cold, windy weather, you'll probably find them bunkered down somewhere on the crest of a hill. But if you're a cat, this is great hunting weather. So we are hoping we can find some tracks and maybe even a cat on the move. We've got one of my favorite little bird species. You got them there, Andrew?
Negative.
And there's one. Oh, they're flying off. They forward a bit. And we saw some really interesting behavior from this particular bird on a few safaris ago.
On the ground or in there?
They're in the Peltiforum, in the Weeping Water. There. So left-hand side of the Peltiforum, it's flown off. For those who, it was...
Oh, I see another one.
Andrew's found another one. There we go. White-crowned helmet shrikes, often referred to as the Seven Sisters, due to the fact that, for a strange reason, a lot of the time there are 7 members in their flock. And they're insectivores, and they're in the right place with that flowering weeping wattle. Oh, off he goes. Lots of insects there. Now we've got an interesting track for you here. I'm just going to reposition the vehicle so you guys can see it. And let's see who's been practicing their tracking and paying attention on the on the drives. Okay. Quite nippy this morning. So we've got this wonderful big mark here, and it is under the rain, so it's been rained on. You can see the little drips on it, and it's obviously quite big. I wonder what it could be, and I'm going to ask you to tell me. So can you let me know, what do you think made this big track down the road? And remember, when you're tracking, don't only look at the track, look around for other sign is the clue. And remember to send your answers through to questions@WildEarth.TV, or use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. So what is that track? And hopefully we'll find one of the animals that made this track at some point on this sunrise safari. Not too much sun in the sunrise today. So, of course, that wonderful tradition of Thanksgiving in America, and Kathy is wondering, what is my favorite fruit pie? Well, Kathy, I haven't eaten too many fruit pies in my day, and I'd probably say the one I have eaten most of, and my favorite would probably be peach. A peach fruit pie or a cherry fruit pie. I think that would be the thing. Ooh, impalas. I wonder if there's any babies in this group. So far I can only see males, and they're definitely not going to have any babies. Oh, there are a few girls there. And you'll notice they can be quite jumpy in this windy weather. So far only boys. Looks like a little bachelor group. And you can see they're a little bit nervous. This windy weather, predators are able to sneak up on them. Oh, look at that. The most numerous antelope in Africa. And also one of the oldest. And it's evolved in its current form. They're fossil records from 1.7 million years ago of impala in the exact same state they are now. So they're such a successful design. There hasn't been need for too many upgrades over the last 1.7 million years. You can see how a few of them have their hackles raised, and they get that sort of lovely deep rufous color. What they're doing is extending the fur on their body, and then they're trapping a little layer of air between the body and the hair, and that creates a nice little warm insulative blanket around them. And if we look carefully on the back legs of that male impala, those dark bulbous things there are called metatarsal glands. And there was a little bit of horseplay between two young boys locking horns. But here we go, you can see those metatarsal glands quite clearly. Now there's a couple of different theories on what they do. Oh, looks like they're full of the joy of morning, chasing each other about. There's a fork-tailed drongo there, taking advantage of any insect disturbed by the impala. So back to the metatarsal glands. So when they're chased by a predator, impala have a very distinct sort of gait where they kick out their back legs. And there is a pheromone released by those metatarsal glands. Now, the one theory is it's to confuse the predator that's chasing them. I myself think that's a serious push. I don't think that is the case. The other theory, which is probably more likely, It's to aid the herd in finding each other after they've been separated during a chase by predators. But again, very difficult to prove, and there's ongoing studies on interesting little things like that. So even the animals we see the most and know the most about, there's always something new to learn about them. So let's leave those boys. We are nearly on the southern boundary, and quite a good place to check for tracks. And we're going to see if anything's come in to visit us overnight. We got a... Where is he? A little bit to the... Oh, you got him there. Yeah, you got him. Is that him?
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Come across to the right. There he is. Look at that. There's an African grey hornbill. Oh, I think he's feeding off possibly termites on the ground there. One of the many hornbill species we get here. Less colourful than the rest, but I think still one of my favourites. They've got that wonderful high-pitched piping call. Unfortunately, I'm not as good an imitator as James is, and I'm sure we can ask him to give you a rendition of the African grey hornbill's call. I'll try, but as I said, not quite the same lyrical genius as James Hendry. It's sort of a... Oh no, I can't. It's sort of a very piping, very distinct call. I was hoping that hornbill would help me out and on cue start calling, but no such luck. So we've got some answers in for that track quiz. I'm afraid I was concentrating on finding the hornbill with Andrew, so I didn't catch the names. Well done to Raisa, Georgianne, and Elaine. You've got it half right. They said elephant trunk. It wasn't actually an elephant trunk. To me, that looked more... Well, it wasn't. It's quite a funny one. And here it is again. An elephant trunk, the way it moves. So it is an elephant, but it's not the trunk. So quite often this looks like a big elephant bull. They'll drag their front toenails, and that creates that track. And that's why you don't see nice distinct tracks around them. So it's been dragging his toenails and sort of just being lazy and dragging their feet. Well, when you weigh 6.5 tons, there's very little to trouble you out here in the bush. So we're on the southern boundary now. So from chatting about one of the biggest animals here, James has got one of the smallest.
Right, everybody, that is a beautiful butterfly, and it's interesting because it's chilly today, and these butterflies will struggle to fly. Like all insects and all arthropods and the reptiles and amphibians and fish, they have to make their own heat. Well, they can't make their own heat. They depend very much on the environment. So on a hot day, you'll find beetles and butterflies and grasshoppers flying about the place. But on a cool day like this, they like to be at rest. And this particular one is called an acria. And you can see his clubbed antenna, and it's one of the ways that you can tell the difference between a moth and a butterfly. And you've got a picture of the antenna there, Brian. You can see he's got a little club on the end of them. A moth has a sort of comb-like structure on the antenna. So not a moth, definitely a butterfly. They also rest. Let me try and hold that still. They also rest with their wings up. They don't rest with their wings down. You can probably see straight up his eyes there. Now the acria is this colour. All of these orange and red and black insects and butterflies are this colour because it's a warning. It's called aposematic coloration, and they're normally quite toxic. I'm not very sure what this one eats as a youngster, but the caterpillars normally live on some kind of a poisonous plant. In the monarch's case, oh look, he's opening his wings. Got him. Isn't that lovely? He's just warming up, thinking about flying away because he thinks he might be eaten by me, but I wouldn't put this in my mouth. Oh, the colours here are just incredible. Right, I'm going to try and flip him round. Let's see if we can't get a look inside of the wing. Oh, sorry. Bad luck. Right, the other thing we have here for you, and I'm sure you've seen hundreds of these while you've been out here, is a millipede. And the millipede, I don't want to touch with my hands because they tend to void their bowels when they're a little afraid. So this chap very cleverly has gone into a ball where his shell will protect him. I don't think they're particularly effective at protecting themselves, to be honest. You find their remains all over the place, from scorpions to civets. I think they get eaten very readily by those that can cope with the cyanide that they have in this incredible exoskeleton. But to touch the side here, it's very hard. It's sort of chitin, which is what most arthropod exoskeletons are made of. It's an amazing hard substance and slippery too. He's curled himself tightly into a little ball. Right, come on then, let's carry on our little quest. We're heading in what I think is an easterly direction. We'll hit a road eventually, and that will tell us exactly where we're going. On we go. You can see evidence of elephants all over the place here. They've broken trees. Now, a question from Kevin Catfish. You want to know what... sorry, I've just got the trackers calling on the radio. I'm just going to get hold of them. Go ahead. They're out tracking. He's following leopard tracks. Going west, next to Impala Road. Let's get that update to Brent. We'll pass it through the final control. Thanks very much. I'll get Brent to contact you. Maybe try channel 2. Good news. Very good news indeed. So, Kevin Catfish. Catfish is an interesting surname, Kevin. You want to know what the explorers of old did when they were lost or on a cloudy day like this? Well, there are a few ways you can find direction. If you know the area well, you know that where the prevailing wind comes from, normally from the southeast here. It's not a southeaster blowing today though. You can tell from the orientation of the red-billed buffalo weaver's nests. They're normally on the northwestern side of a tree. Not very reliable, but it can be done. And then Kevin, I think they used the good old technique of pointing your, the old scouts technique of pointing your analog watch at the sun. And I don't know if you remember how to do that. As far as I remember it, you point the minute hand or hour hand at the sun. Crucial to figure out which it is. And then between the two will give you a kind of a direction of north. Oh, you can't see the sun though if they're clouds. Termite mounds?
The entrance faces.
The entrance often faces in the northerly direction, I believe. So yes, interesting one that. But Kevin, the most reliable way is to just have a compass on you. That's the most reliable way of doing it. Also, if you know the orientation of the land, so I mean the drainage lines here run almost universally north-south. Out there, Brian. And so if we are not walking along a drainage line, then we know, or if we're walking parallel with the drainage line, we know we're going north-south. Here is a road, which I was not expecting to find here. Now, a lovely question from Faye, all the way from Auckland in New Zealand. Rugby World Cup champions, well done. You want to know if the red bush willow tree that I mentioned is the one that you make tea from. Faye, this is it here. In fact, that's a, yes it is, that's a red bush willow. In fact, it's a variable bush willow, so no, not the same one. Faye, I think that one you mean is the russet bush willow. There's also one of the bush willows, and that's the one we make tea out of. And if I can find one, which I can't around here, normally on the drainage line areas, I will show it to you. No fruits at the moment, so we have to go without our tea in the morning here. Now, let's have a look at this incredible tree here. I'm going to see what things there are to discover on it, and let's go and have a look at some wildebeest with Brent, and I'll see if there's anything interesting on this tree.
So we're sitting here with the brindled gnu, or blue wildebeest, slightly different from their East African cousin that forms part of the Great Migration. So they are blue wildebeest, except they have a white beard instead of a black beard. Oh, tripped. One of the wildebeest tripped, broke a branch. This is quite a nice big group. We're right at the tail end of it. And then moving through up onto the crests. Now, wildebeest in this area do have quite a few seasonal migrations. Of course, nothing like the monster migration in the Serengeti and Mara. And they will move seasonally between different areas of the Sabi Sands for the best grazing and water, and that's the females. The males are more sedimentary. They stay in a certain territory that they defend against other males, so it's not uncommon to find a lone wildebeest, and that's a bull waiting for females to come into his territory. And obviously the best territories are held by the biggest and most dominant bulls. I think it seemed they hear something down towards the road, so let's go have a look down there. And I've just got a report in from Bright and Jeffrey, who are out on foot tracking. They are on the tail of a fresh set of leopard tracks around Impala Road. So we're going to start slowly moving our way there. I'll get hold of them on the radio when we're a bit closer. Always important to check these junctions of roads for tracks. So it might be a bit difficult in the lights, but a very pretty little bird. You got him, Andrew? I think it's to the right. Oh, there he's hopping up. Not that. Oh, nice bird. That's the wrong one. Sorry, Andrew. I'll get to that one in a second. There's a chin spot here. There's a chin spot baddest, but we're looking at the cardinal woodpecker. If we come across, okay, go up to the right and in. Bottom of frame, coming through to center. There we go. I think that's. There we go. Looks like a little female cardinal woodpecker. Quite difficult in this light. A small woodpecker. There we go. You can see that very distinct body shape. Incredible that they've developed the shock absorbers in their skull to be able to pound on wood to get those boring beetle larvae out. This is one of the smaller woodpecker species we get. Ooh, got something. See how it's using its beak as a pickaxe. Get it. The various different boring beetles. I think it's got one there, unfortunately. Let me just see if we roll back with a little bit. Oh, There we go, definitely got something there. So marula, it's in a marula tree. Marula trees have got very soft wood, so it's quite a crowd favourite of different burrowing insects. Woodpeckers won't only go for the burrowing insects, they'll eat all other insects they manage to find. But, have a look at now the edge of this marula tree. Just show us a bit about that. Sorry guys, just going to be on the game live radio for a second. Oh no, someone beat me to it, no problem. So we can actually see the borer beetle's holes in this marula tree. Here we go. So almost perfect little circles, and quite often, well, like this tree is already expired. So what's happened here is the elephants have removed this piece of bark and completely around this marula tree. So they've removed the cambium layer. The cambium layer is this reddish section here that transports the nutrients from the roots up through the whole tree, and the borers have moved in and are feasting off the dead wood. So we're going to start slowly making our way towards where Brighton and Jeffrey, who are trekking around Impala Plains, and while we do that, we're going to go to James, who's with the smallest member of the carnivore family.
Look everybody, it's a little dwarf mongoose, Africa's most tiny carnivore. He's very nervous of us. We're very close. We're only about 6 feet from him. There are a whole lot of them. They saw us coming along and they all went rushing back into this disused termite mound, and you can hear him calling. That's Brian attracting him out. Oh, now he knows he's live, you see. He doesn't like to be on camera, obviously. There he is. Hello, little fella. So all around their territories, they will have these mounds that they either use as temporary or permanent refuges. So the permanent ones, they'll spend the night in, they'll come out and warm themselves up in the morning, and then they'll go out foraging. And while they're foraging, they will know of 3 or 4, another one, and there are 3 or 4 different sort of temporary refuges that they can run to if they feel threatened at all. And the noise that you heard them make was their alarm call. I think they'll stay very close to each other today because it's quite chilly. Come on, you little fellow, get out. There we are. Hello. And they will be looking for scorpions and other insects. No, he doesn't like scorpions at all, obviously. They'll be looking for insects, grubs, so those dung beetles which are laying eggs all at the moment. When their grubs hatch, these mongoose will devour them. They'll love them. So sweet. These little ears, I always think it gives them the most human feature. Very confiding, this one. We're standing dead still. We're trying desperately not to move. Every time he sees any movement at all, he disappears back inside. What I'm going to try and do is sneak around the side here. Just give an impression of how close we are to them. Goober Waller, an interesting one, you say, is similar to your prairie dog. No, it isn't really. I think they're completely different. I'm not sure what order the prairie dog belongs to. The most, I suppose, in terms of North American species, I can't think of anything that is particularly closely related to this. I suppose, you know, a weasel would would be the most closely related to a mongoose. They're part of the order Carnivora. Look at him. You see him? See him looking at me? Hello, little fella. I'm now sitting probably about 3 feet from him. It's so special to spend time like this on foot, I tell you. I'll try and get one more look. Come on, Brian, give it a go. They don't like my alarm call. I think they've had enough. Right, let's continue on our way. Now, Mauritia, all the way from Texas, you want to know if they move mounds like a hyena do. Mauritia, they don't move mounds like hyena do necessarily. They have a much smaller area that they operate in. They do move from mound to mound. They'll have 2 or 3 kind of major homes and then lots and lots of temporary refuges in their territories. But they don't necessarily live permanently at either of them, at any of them, like the hyena do. But I guess it is, I mean, it's a relatively similar principle, yes. Hyenas normally move though when they feel threatened in their mound. So if lions come around, they might get up and leave. I think also disease has a large part to play on, you know, whether they stay at a mound for a while. And I think the mongoose, you'll find, probably clean up after their youngsters a bit more than the hyenas do, because they will live within the same mound. You can see here the dung beetles have been hard at work. This was a pile of buffalo dung. And instead of the buffalo dung now, we've got this pile of soil where the dung has been buried underneath the ground. The eggs have been laid. Look at that. This used to be a pile of buffalo dung. It's absolutely incredible. Oh, look at the spider. I don't know what kind of spider that is. He knows something's up. You can see him lifting his front legs there, trying to feel what's going on. I don't think dangerous at all. What I'm going to try and do is turn him around so that you can see his fangs. Well, not his fangs, but his pedipalps. Now the pedipalps, as he stares down the barrel of this camera, you've got the 8 legs of the spider. The front 2 are pointing up. Probably they've got sensory. They've probably got sensory hairs on them. They've probably got sensory hairs on them, and so he was feeling the different vibrations in the air. And I don't know if you did manage to see, but in front he had those sort of 2 things that stuck out the front of his mouth. Those are called pedipalps, and they help him to put things in his mouth. Those are flies. I thought I was being set upon by some ticks. And then underneath the pedipalps are the 2 fangs of the spider, which people find very terrifying, but there are very few truly dangerous spiders out here. In fact, probably none. A sack spider, which you can find on the trees around here, might give you a bite, and that'll create a kind of a horrible lesion and eat away at the skin, which isn't very nice. And of course there is the black widow, which can be neurotoxic, and if you have an allergic reaction to it, it can be very bad. But there's nothing medically impossible about dealing with a black widow bite. Lovely comment from Sonia. Thank you, Sonia, for giving us of your time. You say this is your first experience with us. Well, that's excellent. You say you can't take your eyes away from the screen. Well, I hope that is a situation that lasts. And remember, next week, well, in fact starting tomorrow, it's it's Nat.Geo Wild's Big Cat Week, so we're going to be trying to find all the cats around the place, and the sort of we'll do a couple of fast-paced shows in the mornings, and then
guys, we're with one of the most endangered bird species in Africa, and it is a really important species. It's an indicator species to the health of an ecosystem. So it's a ground hornbill, and it just walked across the road, so I'm just slowly creeping forward, not to disturb them, and hopefully we'll get a nice visual. There we go. I can only see one. We're going to move forward again now. Let's just get a safety shot there. We'll try to see whether it's a male or a female. Females have a little royal blue patch in the middle of that red wattle around their head. And one of the most iconic bird calls in the early morning and late evening. That it's just going behind the bush again. So there's a very important monitoring program that happens in the Sabi Sands with these animals. And to me this just looks like it could be a single individual. There we go. Not the greatest visual, but it is a male from what I can see. You can see how swollen the wattles are. It is the breeding season. Now, it could be out looking for females or collecting food for a female who's already in a nest. And I think that's probably the strongest possibility at the moment. You can see how enlarged those red wattles are when it comes into view. There we go. Absolutely massive bird, and since it is Thanksgiving, and for a comparative size, about the size of a very large turkey, maybe a little bit bigger. And incredible hunters. And there's a wonderful Venda story. Venda is a tribe from north of us here. About there was a war between birds and the snakes, and the king of the snakes, according to the Venda, is the black mamba, and the birds were trying to fight this battle, and the only bird who didn't partake in this battle was the ground hornbill, and the birds were losing this battle against the snakes, and the birds kept going to the ground hornbill, begging for it to become involved in the battle, and eventually, after a lot of begging and pleading, the ground hornbills became involved in the battle between the birds and the snakes. So I pop out into the open. There we go, and it met with the king of the snakes on the battlefield, and in two very swift movements chopped the black mamba in half, and that was the end of the battle or the war, and therefore the ground hornbill, according to the Venda, was crowned the king of the birds. So they're very long lived. They live for up to 50 years. They have a very high mortality rate amongst chicks as well, and they do need sort of semi-pristine ecosystems for survival. And they feed off snakes, very obviously, as well as lots of lizards. They'll eat other birds' eggs, ground nesting birds' eggs, baby birds that live on the ground, big insects. And one of the most fascinating behaviors, and we're not going to go any further, we're going to let that hornbill wander off. See if we can get a few last visuals of it before it disappears into the thicket. And one of the most incredible things about them, especially not so much now, but before breeding season starts, males are constantly, like most creatures in the world, trying to impress the females. And they will actually catch multiple different things. So I've seen one that had got a snake, a lizard, a little monitor as well, another type of lizard, all in its mouth, and they will present it to the female as a gift, as part of the courtship process. So like other hornbills, they like to nest in very specific holes, and they will utilize the same nests year after year. But being that big, there isn't that much, or there aren't that many active nest sites that are available to ground hornbills, which is one of the reasons they are quite endangered. And outside of the protected areas, the deforestation stuff has removed a lot of those nesting areas, and they are so particular about nesting. If a tree that their nest is in falls down, they might not nest again or rear babies for up to 5-10 years. And they live in little family groups, and those babies will often stay with the adults for their whole lives. And quite interesting, what happens is that the females, the adult female, the biggest, the oldest female, the matriarchal female, when she dies, one of her daughters will take over. The males will disperse between different things, but it's also very hard for them to get into a new flock. So they are really, really specialized. And you find with a lot of species that are very specialized, breeding and survival can be a bit of a problem in areas that are not protected. So we're in the area where Bryce and Jeffrey should be following tracks. I'm going to try giving them a call on the tracking channel and see if they've got an update for us. Bryce and Jeffrey coming. They might be really close, and they might have turned down their radio when they get very close to an animal while they're tracking. So we're just going to keep moving through here, and we'll try again just now. Oh, that didn't sound like Bright or Jeffrey. Someone's on a wrong channel. So they're towards Impala Plains, and we're going to head there now. Let's just double check that there aren't any tracks around here. Oh, nearly had a head-on collision with a large dung beetle there. Quite a funny story. I was late picking up my dad from an airstrip in northern Botswana, and my little brother was sitting in the front seat next to me. I was careering towards there because obviously I'd like to be late and leave people sitting in the middle of the bush on an airstrip. And we were driving really quickly. Well, relatively speaking, quickly in the bush. And obviously all the vehicles are open. And this dung beetle took off and hit my brother smack in the eye and gave him a completely closed black eye. And of course my parents thought I'd been bullying him, which he didn't help by saying no, it was dung beetle. So he milked that one for quite a bit. So while we try to find Bryce and Jeffrey and see what update they've got for us, let's go see what James is up to on Shank's pony.
Faye day, there is the bush willow fruit, Combrium herreroense. Now, not only is bush willow fruit here, and if you ever do want to make the tea, you just put that in water, mix it around a bit, boil it up. Tastes like sucking on a leaf, basically. Really good. Then, far more interestingly, look at this little green.
So we're back. James is just in a bit of a bad signal area, so he will be trying to move. Oh dear. Well, not oh dear, oh yay is what we should be saying. But oh dear that I spotted them that late. I can get you a nice view on it now. So I'm pretty sure these are the tracks that Bright and Jeffrey are following. I'm just trying to get Andrew in the right spot so you guys can see us. There's a nice clear one. That one's going to be the best down there. You got it, Andrew? There we go. Big male leopard track. You can see those 3 lobes at the back there and distinct no claws in the front. Quite fresh tracks. Can't see any dapples of rain from early last night over them. So heading back that way. So now we're going to try maneuver very slowly, see if we can see where this leopard left the road. Don't see any Bright or Jeffrey tracks, so I think we might be ahead of them on the tracks. Andrew, you looking carefully? Time for your tracking test today?
Yes.
So I'm going to ask Andrew to check carefully with any game paths going off that side. I'm going to do the same here. So interestingly, the big male leopard in this area, it could be any leopard, but it's more than likely Tingana is the dominant male in this area. I'm going to have to have a stern warning with myself that I didn't see those tracks a bit earlier. Now I've made it harder for us to follow them. It's always preferable if you find the tracks going in the direction you're driving, not towards you. Don't have any tracks here, so it's possible we might have headed into the block either side. We do have a little road that's sort of got the nickname, oh, there's Impala around here. And they look quite relaxed. But that leopard track could have gone through very early this morning. So I think we're going to go around and check onto Zoe's road. We've driven that road already today, so if we find tracks on top of our tracks, then we know how fresh they are. And on a little hunch, I also want to check the little road that's got the nickname Eugenius's Road. Eugenius, or Eugene, is one of our tech guys, and he spends a lot of time here when the gremlins invade our signal. This is where one of our main repeaters that sends out this incredible live drive to you guys all over the world, bringing the heart of Africa to your living rooms.